Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the podcast entitled Couch Potatoes Unite! This is a podcast based on a blog of the same name because we're just crazy like that. My name is Kylie and I love TV. If you feel the same, keep listening and or checking out the blog at couchpotatoesunite.wordpress.com as you're bound to find some common ground or something you like. For at Couch Potatoes Unite, we're all about the wonders and unique long-form storytelling of the small screen. CPU! Hopes you've been following releases of brand new episodes of the podcast on Wednesdays, as well as new blog entries on some Tuesdays. It's easy to do if you subscribe, and as always, we have several more new episodes on the way. Because the panelists and I live lives behind our podcast, the episodes are still being published once per week in mini-seasons, kind of like The Walking Dead. So subscribe to the blog or the podcast via iTunes or Stitcher Radio to stay on top of brand new episodes. Episodes already published discuss a variety of shows, including, but not limited to, Doctor Who, Downton Abbey, How to Get Away with Murder, Broadchurch, Once Upon a Time, New Girl, The Vampire Diaries, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Gotham, Supernatural, Orange is the New Black, Game of Thrones, and Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt. We've also taken a look back at shows that have been off the air for some time. In addition, we have multi-show and within-show series in which we cover a show, or perhaps the universe of several shows, over the course of several ongoing episodes, including the X-Files, the DC television universe, such as Arrow and The Flash, and the Marvel's Defenders, such as Daredevil and Jessica Jones. If you don't hear your show in this podcast format, though, check out the blog. Fellow panelists and I still write reviews, and we're always seeking new panelists, so if you have any interest in joining the discussion, say hello. We have a Facebook page, a Twitter, follow us at CPU Podcast, and an email address at couchpotatoesunitepodcast@gmail.com. We also have an Instagram at Couch Potatoes Unite and a Pinterest at CPU Podcast. Of course, you can always subscribe to the blog, our YouTube channel, our iTunes channel, or our Stitcher Radio channel and leave comments and reviews. If you like what you hear, tell your friends. Write a review or give us a thumbs up so we can grow this friendly community of couch potatoes. Today we are around the water cooler as a continuation of another brand new CPU! Podcast series. This series won't have a fixed number of episodes like other series we do. Rather, it will be ongoing as this show is still on the air. However, we're covering it over multiple episodes because it is an anthology series, and actually the first of its kind in recent years. Welcome to the second episode of our American Horror Story series. In this series, we've already discussed Season 1, otherwise known as Murder House. Today, we move to the second season, officially subtitled Asylum. Described as an anthology series, each season of American Horror Story is conceived as a self-contained miniseries following a disparate set of characters and settings and a storyline with its own beginning, middle, and end. Some plot elements are loosely inspired by true events. The second season, subtitled Asylum, takes place in Massachusetts during the year 1964 and follows the stories of the patients and staff of an institution for the criminally insane. Patients, doctors, and nuns occupy the Briarcliff Mental Institution. The wardens who run the institution include the stern Sister Jude, played by Jessica Lange, her protégée, Sister Mary Eunice, played by Lily Rabe, and the founder of the institution, Monsignor Timothy Howard, played by Joseph Fiennes. The doctors charged with treating the patients at the asylum include psychiatrist Dr. Oliver Thretson, played by Zachary Quinto, and the sadistic scientist Dr. Arthur Arden, played by James Cromwell. The patients, many of whom claim to be unjustly institutionalized, include lesbian journalist Lana Winters, played by Sarah Paulson, accused serial killer Kit Walker, played by Evan Peters, nymphomaniac Shelley, played by Chloe Sevigny, and alleged murderer Grace Bertrand, played by Lizzie Brocheret. Briarcliff's inhabitants are routinely subject to supernatural and scientific influences, including demonic possession and extraterrestrial abduction. The season primarily takes place throughout the 1960s, with flash forwards to 2012. As we sit around the water cooler for our American Horror Story series of podcast episodes, we're also introducing another new development to the CPU! Structure. You might already have noticed that from time to time, some familiar voices have taken the moderating reins to give yours truly, the Chief Couch Potato, a break. or a chance to be an ordinary panelist where appropriate. Well, for this series, because we're all big fans of the show and because each season is so different, we decided to rotate moderators. Thus, each new episode will feature a different moderator, although there are only 3 of us, so it will come back around again here shortly. Today's episode, Asylum, will be moderated by a frequent panelist and co-member of this panel. Loyal CPU listeners have probably heard his voice almost as much as mine, or maybe panelist Kristen. In addition to the AHS panel, you may have also heard our new moderator's voice on the Doctor Who, Orange is the New Black, Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, Futurama, and Broadchurch panels, in addition to 2 other panel series, The X-Files and The Marvel's Defenders. You may have further seen or heard him when we went live with the No Outlet Improv Troupe, as he is one of their founding members. Without further ado then, I'd like to introduce Nick as today's moderator. Take it away, Nick.
Hi, I'm Nick. You just heard Kylie talking. She's a panelist member in this series. Let's introduce or reintroduce our third panelist.
I'm Sarah. I'm married to Nick.
So we probably don't need to go over how we started watching the show, but maybe we can get why we decided to jump in, why each of us decided to watch season 2, if we knew it was going to be a completely different storyline, and we can go over our character descriptions. Were you in search of a horrifying experience, but you ended up biting off more than you can chew with disastrous consequences, such as Teresa and Leo? Are you brave and savvy, desperate to expose the truth behind this season of American Horror Story, despite any personal ramifications, like Lana Winters? Did you watch this season because you yourself have a dark and murderous secret, and were hoping to place yourself directly in the action, such as Dr. Oliver Thredson? Are you a well-meaning but misguided viewer with the best intentions of being a superfan, but in the end you are just an accomplice to the lukewarm viewership, such as Monsignor Timothy Howard? Did you identify as a hero with a heart of gold, a watcher of Season 2, who wants to expose injustice and end human suffering, all while finding true romance, a la Kit Walker? Did you watch this series because you are secretly possessed by the devil, such as Sister Mary Eunice McKee? Were you a viewer of this season of American Horror Story because you were hiding a deep, dark secret, and were secretly anxious to connect with aliens like Grace? Are you drawn to watch Asylum because you enjoy witnessing human suffering as Dr. Arthur Arden? Did you watch this season to atone for some perceived sin on the run from alcohol and or having a personal reversal of faith like Sister Jude Martin? Did you dislike the season of American Horror Story and would have preferred to be off committing adultery with various men and women like Shelley? Were you forced to watch Asylum due to circumstances beyond your control and would prefer to be living your life freely without this burden, such as Pepper, Alma, or Wendy? Or are you just the angel of death?
Oh, what a choice. What was the first one again?
Teresa and Leo.
Yeah, but read it. What did it say?
Were you in search of a horrifying experience, but you ended up biting off more than you could chew with disastrous consequences, like getting your arm ripped off?
I started watching this show because my husband was watching it and we lived together, so it was always on, and I finally gave in.
And I made her.
Is that how it works?
No.
I worked with the X-Files.
That's true, but we were dating then. I was still courting him. I had to pretend to be interested in the things that he liked.
Oh, okay.
It worked out well for me. This was the last season that I watched. I watched them out of order. I know, I'm crazy.
It doesn't matter, really.
Matters less for this.
It's true.
That's true. That is true. So that's kind of why I watched. I'm going to go with Teresa and Leo. I mean, I still have my arms, but I definitely, whenever I'm watching these shows, I feel like it's more than I can handle, definitely. I've bitten off more than I could chew. So, that's me.
Okay.
Plus, I kind of wish I was Jenna Dewan Tatum.
Oh.
The woman's got abs for days, and she's had a baby.
That's true.
I've also had a baby. Do not look like that.
Well.
Sorry, listeners.
Okay, well, I kept watching Asylum because I enjoyed Murder House, and actually far more than I expected to. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to keep watching this show, and I'm totally intrigued. I did know that it was going to be a totally different story and totally different characters with totally different premise. So I was actually intrigued by that, because I don't know of any other show prior to the point that actually operated in that way. So I was curious to see what they would do and how they would do it. As far as the characters, there were two that I gravitated toward, but now I can't remember what the other one was. The first one was Teresa and Leo, because I definitely feel like with Asylum particularly, watching it and trying to appreciate was biting off more than I could chew.
I think the other one was that you are secretly possessed by the devil.
No, that's not it.
Are you the angel of death?
No, I don't think so. I mean,
This one starts with the words, "Did you dislike this season?" So I feel like that might be right up your alley.
What does it say?
Did you dislike this season and would have preferred to be off committing adultery with various...
No!
Oh, I know what it was. It was the Kit Walker, Are You the Hero, and In Search of Romance.
No, let me
Oh,
see.
man.
Oh, this is already off the rails.
No, I'm Senior Howard. Are you a well-meaning but misguided viewer with the best intentions of being a superfan, but in the end you are just an accomplice to lukewarm viewership? That's the one I wrote. So the first one with Teresa and Leo, the second one with Senior Howard, and we'll talk about this, but ironically, I said in our last episode that Murder House is my favorite season of the 4 that I have seen. Asylum is my least favorite season, which actually is kind of controversial because most people would say Freak Show. I actually like Freak Show better than Asylum, but we'll talk about that in a little bit.
My character that I identify with is Dr. Arthur Arden. Not because I enjoy witnessing human suffering, but I do enjoy horror movies, like the fictionalized version.
But you wrote it as human suffering.
Well,
you're a secret Nazi doctor.
I am German.
I said, I wrote all of them. Not him.
Oh, okay.
I helped.
He did help.
A very little bit.
He did the Teresa and Leo one, yes.
Oh, fired. Anyway.
Well, he edited it.
Oh, good.
So I oddly might agree with Kylie that this is my least favorite of the 4, but I like it a lot more than she did. I still enjoy it when she could talk about how much she disliked it. So, as I said, I was Dr. Arden, but the first question I'm very curious about is the alien aspect of this season. It kind of comes in right away. It's pretty early for a season titled Asylum, and I was wondering people's first feelings about it, because I kind of already know how you guys feel about the overall story with that. So we can talk a little bit about both.
That's interesting. You went straight there.
I wanted to get it out of the way.
Yeah. So the reason I still liked Asylum, I still like American Horror Story. There's not a season of it that I hate. When I say it's my least favorite, it's just because I prefer Asylum the least of the 4 that I've seen. One of the reasons that I prefer Asylum the least is the alien storyline. The problem with the alien storyline is that, yes, they do introduce it in the very first episode, but so much happens in this season, and I kind of talked about this before we started recording. I feel like the writers crafted the Asylum story to force the audience or the viewer to feel like how the characters feel being trapped in this asylum. It's very frenetically paced. It's a very scattered storyline. It goes off into like 25 different directions. The alien piece does not get revisited again until almost the very last couple episodes. And then by that time, you've been through so much and you've learned so much about the characters, all of which you listed in the description, that you're like, what the hell? This is stupid. I didn't expect the aliens actually to be real, and now that they are, I feel like that was a lame payoff to everything that we had learned up until that point.
So, before I saw this, my husband, Nick, had talked to me a great deal about this. season, because this was really the season. Whenever he put Murder House on, I would kind of leave the room. Like, I couldn't handle it. This, I sort of stuck around a little bit. There were some musical numbers. That's always going to draw me in. I'm crazy about musicals. And so I was kind of like, oh, but what's going on? And he'd kind of told me. And when you say it to me, oh, there's this show with an asylum, and there are nuns, there's a serial killer, there's aliens, there's a Nazi doctor. If you tell me all of this, I'm like, that doesn't make any... That's really, like, disjointed. And the stuff at the beginning with Teresa and Leo, and just... I didn't get a good sense from it. I was like, I'm going to hate this. I'm not going to understand it. I'm not going to follow it. But actually, it came together fine for me. I mean, I don't think it makes a whole lot of sense that the aliens were there. I feel like they needed a solution to a problem, like you said, kind of that they've crafted, and then they just, oh, well, it could be aliens that could do all these things, or, heal people and make babies, whatever they were doing.
I don't even know at this point.
And you should know, listeners, that we're all avid X-Files fans, so we don't have a problem with aliens in our shows. It just kind of seemed like, oh, well, we could just make it aliens and that would be fine. However, in the end, it didn't really bother me as much as I thought it was going to. Because, like I said, there was so many other things going on that were just ludicrous to me that I was like, okay, I'll buy into this.
I think my biggest problem, one of my problems, is that I feel like American Horror Story and Ryan Murphy could have done a good job with a season where it could be American Horror Story Abduction or UFO, whatever.
Yes.
But now I think they wasted it on this, and I say wasted because I don't know how much it necessarily helped, even though it is integral to the story they ended up telling.
Were the aliens... So you know how they kept going out and feeding, like...
That was not the aliens.
That was not the aliens.
That was Dr. Arden's text.
See, no, I was just very confused. So that was like humanoid-y things.
Yes,
those were the results of... So he brought in the patients to experiment on. Some of them died, but the ones that didn't became these things that were lost in the woods that they had to go out and feed because they were ultimately alive. They actually have a name for them. I can't think of what it is right
Chuds?
now.
No, that's a different movie.
It was confusing. I
think
Raspers.
Because you almost, for a second, for me, you almost thought that was where the aliens were coming in, too. And they do come in with the experiments because they save a couple people, or just Kit and Grace?
I think a couple people, Kit and
Grace. The aliens intervened there, too, so with the Dr. Arden storyline, so it was hard to...
Why are these aliens... I don't know. Now that I'm recanting, now maybe it makes less sense. I thought that the aliens were the things in the woods, and I just didn't get it, but why do the aliens care so much? We'll never know.
We'll never know. And see, so I have two follow-up points. First of all, Nick, I totally agree with you. As Sarah said, we're all X-Files fans. If you follow our podcasts, we've done that series. We've done 5 episodes about it. Sci-fi and horror together, I'm all for that. Make an abduction scenario. Make one of the seasons of American Horror Story about scary alien abductions. I can get behind that. Asylum, even though they introduced it in the very first episode with Kit, to sort of attach to his character and losing Alma, his wife, and all of that. That's not what they stuck with. Asylum ended up being more of a character study of all the different people inside the asylum, particularly focused on Sister Jude. I think that she was the most, you got the most backstory on her and found out the most about her secret vices and everything else compared to every other character in this season. And because they focused so much on the characters, the aliens were so anticlimactic. That's why they were lame. It's like then you brought them in at the very last second, and maybe you're right, Sarah, it was to solve a problem that they wrote themselves into a corner or something. I don't know. Or maybe they had already planned that, but the execution of it was just poor. Mm-hmm. That's how I feel. And that's why the series ranks lower for me than, say, Freak Show, which is much maligned, but I think is more solidly told story from beginning to end.
I agree with that. It doesn't bother me as much, but I agree with everything you just said about the aliens and the overall storytelling and arc of season 2. So, sorry to jump in right with the aliens, but...
Well... It's fine to get the elephant out of the room. That's fine.
To kind of go back, since Right. The first thing we see is the present day. And it's this season is kind of telling that story, but we see very little of it. So it's, in an odd way, almost like the whole season is a flashback or a building up. So I was wondering how everyone felt about the strength of that story, the snippets we're getting. Every episode kind of retells a little bit about this little 2-minute scenes and then moves forward a little bit. But did that seem to get in the way of the story for you guys, or did it add to the story?
Well, I think when they connected, because Dylan McDermott played the rape baby's son. Because, spoiler, Dr. Thredson is Bloodyface, not Kit. And he rapes Lana, which is sad because she likes women.
That's not the only reason why that's sad.
Well, no, there's lots of uncomfortable
Sure, yes.
But it's like, there's a lot of horrible things that you get to watch in this season for the very first time. But I think because we don't meet the rape baby son, we don't know who he is when he gets introduced in the story. So whenever we saw him in the flash forwards, I thought that was okay. I know that he was sort of the killer roaming around the asylum, and they needed a device to get to him. But Adam Levine was totally a stunt cast. Come on.
Oh, for sure.
So I don't, it wouldn't have mattered who played that part. Were they effective scenes? I just really saw them as more of a then and now sort of thing. Like, here's the window, and kind of how you get haunted house, haunted asylum stories. That's all I took it for.
I think the first time, in the first episode, it is a classic, like, cold open.
Yeah.
These people, we're getting to know these characters, and then...
Yeah, because weren't there other killers there, and then
There were people dressed up like him.
Yeah.
Copycat.
It's just confusing to me as the viewer. I'm like, oh wait, you're not the killer, you're a copycat. Oh, but the real killer's there, and I don't know. I didn't need it. I didn't hate it again, but I came away very confused, as you can tell. Like,
That's because it went in 25 different directions.
It did.
And one of those directions was the demon possession and basically a real sped up story of The Exorcist that they recreate and then propels the whole story arc of Sister Mary Eunice. One of my favorite sub-genres of horror movie are movies about possessions and exorcisms, so I kind of really enjoyed that they started going into it, and I liked the episode with the exorcism, but it was one of those things that does this need to be in the asylum? Aren't there enough things already happening in the asylum that are horror related and scary? So I was wondering how other people felt about it, and if I just was too close to the perfection of, like, The Exorcist. Is this one of those homages that we needed to go into here or not?
It didn't bother me. I liked it because with the nuns being in charge of the asylum, I thought it tied in pretty well to that. Plus, there was the priest who was grappling with his own faith and his morals and stuff. So I liked it. The Angel of Death then came in, and that maybe took it a step too far, but I love Frances Conroy, and I thought she was just beautifully fantastic. So
I didn't mind the possession. Yes, it was a very obvious homage to The Exorcist. That's one of the few horror movies I have actually watched. And watched all the way through.
It's one of the few that still, like, gives me chills and goosebumps as I'm watching it.
There's a new pilot coming this fall for The Exorcist. They're making it a TV show, so...
Well, they already tried that, and it was real cheesy.
Well, maybe this one will be.
I'm optimistic.
Okay. But so for this, it didn't bother me. And I think the only reason it didn't bother me is based on the fact that Lily Rabe is such a strong actress. Mm-hmm. She really sold it. From the story perspective, I agree with Sarah. It was tied well into the fact that the nuns were in charge of the asylum, and we were basically, first she was possessed in contrast to how she starts, which is this very innocent, very meek and weak nun, and then the possessed Mary Eunice is set up against Sister Jude, who is ultimately somewhat sort of pious by the time we meet her, but has this very checkered past that she's trying to run away from. So I thought that interplay was very interesting. And made sense. I didn't mind it, but I also felt like it went on for a long time.
That was going to be my next question. I think it kind of needed to, but it would have worked better for me if we saw more of that dichotomy between the character that was possessed coming through and fighting, because there was such a big difference, and Lily Ray acted them clearly differently.
Yeah.
So that would have helped me not mind it going all the way into not necessarily the 13th episode, but for a good chunk of episodes. And then it also ties in with her relationship with Dr. Arden.
Yes. Because she does start off rather loyal to him, because he's kind to her, as opposed to Jude, who is horrible to her.
And she slowly does the turn on Dr. Arden, where now she's in charge of this whole thing, and he wants nothing to do with her. But there are quite a few, maybe, for me, interesting relationships that we see or are hinted at. Like Sister Jude and the Monsignor, they hint at that a little bit. Maybe it's more one way from her. I'm not sure.
More one way.
Yeah, she wants to get with him, which...
She wears red lingerie under her habit.
Right, but he does talk about bringing her with him to the Vatican, and as someone who was raised Catholic, I don't know if that ever makes sense. Like, as a priest moving to Vatican City, I have specific nuns that I would like to bring with me.
I don't think
so. That's where I thought that he might have been reciprocating it, but not as obvious as her.
I never took it that way. I always took it like maybe it was sort of a red herring the way they played it, but in the end, I think he was merely coming from a point of he's very ambitious as far as his goals within the church, and Sister Jude is such a strong personality who also made him dinner and kind of kowtowed at every... Wow, we came up with the same word. And that word of all words, but did everything he said and flattered him all the time. Because they really do make a point of showing the sins of the religious leaders in the asylum, including the Monsignor. And I think his biggest vice is vanity, and she plays right into that. That's what I took it as.
All right.
How much do you love Joseph Fiennes, by the way?
I love him.
I love him, and I think my husband looks a little bit like him, so maybe that's... you.
I'll
leave that. I don't know if I see it, but...
I adore him.
Me or what's his face?
Both of you.
Oh.
I just assumed that he appreciated that she was a strong woman that was running this asylum and doing all these things that maybe other people didn't have the stomach for, and that he needed that kind of person to boost him to where he needed to be, kind of.
There's that, too.
But I never thought about it too much, I guess. It wasn't...
Of course, there's a question of how effective she was and whether she was humane in her treatments, but I don't think that he realized the extent of what she was doing until later.
I don't think he did.
Do you think... I feel like she thought she was doing well and helping.
She thought she was. That's why the Lana character even starts to get interested, is because she learns about Bloody Face, but then she walks in the very first episode and sees Sister Jude shaving Shelley's head for having sex with somebody. So, I don't even remember who, and that just piques her interest more, and then, of course, Sister Jude turns the tables on her when she sneaks into the asylum and commits her, and tricks her girlfriend into agreeing to it.
Tricks are just blackmails, really.
Blackmails, yeah.
Which, I don't know. That kind of, was one of the more upsetting parts for me, with all these horrifying things going on. For some reason, that, making it so that Lana potentially is feeling betrayed by Grace? No, Grace is the one...
Grace is
in the asylum.
Girlfriend.
Wendy.
Wendy, yeah.
Wendy.
I get Grace, Wendy, and Alma's names confused, but I think I have them separate. Alma being Kit's wife that died.
Yes.
He's blamed for murdering.
Spoiler, she died.
Mm-hmm. Later died.
So,
yeah.
Did anyone think Kit actually did it at the first couple episodes and think that he was Bloody Face? Is that...
No.
I never thought he was
It never even seemed plausible.
It was the way they set it up and the way they transitioned into it. Even the very first time I saw it, I never thought he was actually the killer.
I know Sarah probably wasn't surprised by who Bloody Face was since she reads ahead.
Correct, and you told me.
Oh. My bad.
Were you going to ask me if I was
Yes.
surprised? I don't know. I can't say I was surprised. I don't think I knew it was Thredson. Not at first, for sure. But Zachary Quinto, thanks to his turns as Sylar and as Chad in Murder House season, Sylar, of course, was on Heroes, has a talent for playing really off-putting characters. So I always found his character off-putting, so when the reveal happened, it wasn't like it was a surprise. And I started to put 2 and 2 together, as they were leading up to the reveal, but when we first met him, I did not suspect it was him.
I was pretty much in the same boat. I never at any point was like, it's him, he's that bloody face. But as Lana was getting, he was helping her out, and it looked like she was getting out, you kind of knew, well, it's too early for her to be out. There has to be something. So, was it too convenient, or do you think he intentionally went out of his way to kill Wendy? Right?
He had an obsession with creating mother substitutions and then killing them. I think Wendy was really just a device to somehow, in his mind, put Lana in a position where he could then put her as this mother figure, and then when she disappointed him, turn around and kill her. Because that's just the way his mind worked with the victims that he chose. Mm-hmm. I think. That's how I remember
I kind of assumed that he was mad that he couldn't turn her into a heterosexual, so he went after her lover.
That might have been part of it, but I don't think that was a primary motivation.
Because he kept Wendy alive for a while before he killed her. He didn't kill her as quickly as some people. So I didn't know if he...
Well, didn't he also have a growing interest in torture and all the different ways that he could turn the screws before he finally killed them?
I think, but maybe yes, and he had a couple odd character traits. Because wasn't he, building stuff out of their bone and flesh? Wasn't there a lampshade?
He was... Bloody Face was pieces
Right, he did that. But I think the lampshade was made of his victim's skin.
Oh, yeah, you're right, in his weird apartment.
Yeah, so he had a lot going on there.
Which is kind of a Silence of the Lambs homage.
Oh, for sure, which is loosely based off reality. There's a lot of that. So, American Horror Story seems to they tell a full story throughout the whole season, and they have at least a two-parter, bigger chunk within it that's its own story. Murder House, I think, weaves in the most with it, which is kind of what makes Murder House the best is it all weaves together. I think in this one, the big arc that comes in is Anne Frank. One of these people is Anne Frank. Sarah's making a Why Are There Aliens face in this season.
The whole Anne Frank thing, I just was confused.
Honestly, I forgot about it until we had our pre-podcast.
Because it feels like it doesn't belong as a part of it at all.
But here again, 25 different directions in this season, none of which really coalesced in the end.
Well, and she's not Anne Frank, except, well, we don't, because, it was so confusing. Maybe we're not supposed to know. Maybe they've done their job, but it was they just finally convinced us that she's Anne Frank, and I'm like, oh, twist. But then she's not, but then he really is the Nazi doctor. I don't know.
But so they do mention her diary and how popular it was in 1964, because I don't know the timeline and the history of when the diary came out and was...
It wasn't too long before that. It didn't come out right away, and it wasn't too long before that. I don't remember when, though.
Because she does recognize Dr. Arden, and we know Dr. Arden was a Nazi doctor. So, to some extent, in this universe, what does it matter if she's Anne Frank or just somebody else who was there amongst the Holocaust? I guess her delusion, which I don't know why.
Well, it's also a name that people know.
Right.
I mean, I think a lot of people don't know the names of the victims, so...
But I meant in the realm of the characters, why the fact that she's calling herself Anne Frank, why is that such a huge thing in 1964? Because we know she died according to her diary.
Well, we know the diary doesn't cover that she died. She left the diary behind in their hidey hole, and it was discovered later by the owner of the house. She died at Auschwitz. I thought she died at Auschwitz.
Yeah.
And I don't remember how that happened, but
she was sick.
Oh yeah.
I guess we could all agree it doesn't seem to fit with this storyline.
It doesn't fit, and I guess the reason why I forgot it is because even if you wanted to believe that the character was Anne Frank, it doesn't jive with what we know about the real-life Anne Frank.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we know the real-life Anne Frank died as a child in a concentration camp. So I guess it's fine that they wanted to tell that story, and it was probably a device to kind of give us the implication about Dr. Arden and his Nazi past.
I'm pretty sure that's what pushes Sister Jude over the edge to really look into it more and travel down that avenue.
Well, she doesn't trust him from the beginning. She says that very clearly in the first episode, that he's like the most horrible human being alive.
I guess that is a way we see the Monsignor playing Sister Jude, because the only reason Dr. Arden has power there is because he lets him be there.
Yeah. The interesting thing about the Dr. Arden character is that it sets up the science versus faith dialogue in this season, which I rewatched the first episode before we did this podcast, but I remember this season pretty clearly. But in the first episode, there's that scene where Sister Jude has made dinner for the Monsignor, and you get her kind of fantasies and sexual, visions of her and the Monsignor. But one of the things that she tries to convince him in the dinner is how evil Dr. Arden is, and the Monsignor explains it away as, well, he's doing the scientific work that you can't do, and scientific work is still a work of God, and she's trying to debate him on that, and that becomes a recurring theme throughout the season. But then obviously science seems to be the more evil of the two forces, because look at what he does. Oh, this very complicated season.
Yeah, and then remember the Santa guy? What was his thing?
Well, they spent they spent more time with his backstory than I think they needed to, but I think it helped push the Sister Jude now becoming a patient instead of running it into motion, letting him out, Sister Eunice letting him out and framing her, which I think they filmed well and told that story where you think somebody else is getting stabbed, and then, the Santa Claus guy. It kind of comes out of nowhere, but all the seasons have a little bit of, Piggy in season 1.
And the Axeman.
Yeah. Well, the
Axeman they bring in more, because he end up with her?
He ends up with her.
But
the Piggy guy was so that's interesting. We didn't even talk about that.
I thought about it. I think you mentioned that actor.
Yeah,
that was the other point I wanted to bring up.
Eric Stonestreet, and he was supposed to have an appearance in this season, but they couldn't get anything scheduled with him. I think he started Modern Family at that point.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, definitely.
The Piggy episodes, or actually it was just one episode, just was so pointless in that murder house. That was probably the one thing that was completely out of left field and went absolutely nowhere. The Santa Claus guy, you're right, it at least set up the whole Sister Jude turntable thing. I didn't feel like that was, I don't even remember him, so I don't feel like it went on as long or as needlessly as some of the other plot threads,
I thought he was around quite a bit, but I mean,
he was
they kept just locking people in with him and
they did
using him as you're gonna have to go in there with the Santa guy. Maybe they only did that once, but it really.
I think it was only a couple of episodes of him though.
Yeah.
Maybe it felt like forever.
He might have appeared in another one after that, just because he was still in the asylum, but I don't think they spent that much time. But it still may be more than was necessary with so many other threads all over the place. We are winding down in the season, which is actually where it starts falling apart. I remember thinking that if I was watching this show as it was released 1 week at a time, I might have stopped. But because I could watch one right after the other, it was easier to get through. But I feel like the last 2 or 3 episodes dragged a little bit too much and even the way they filmed it, they're a lot brighter. They no longer feel like a horror story as we start getting closer to the present. And what I find interesting about that is I enjoyed finding out what was going on with the characters. It just seemed to take too long, or didn't have enough of the asylum parts in until we finally get the Lana's investigation and how she brought down Briar Cliff. And there's another parallel, because Sarah and I talked about this when we were watching it, but the Geraldo Rivera interview, or where he...
It was an expose. There was a famous institution, and I can't even tell you what state it was in or what it was called, but where basically these people's loved ones were being treated horribly. So back in the day, a lot of time when people had a child with a disease, a disorder, or a syndrome, they were told to just stick the kid in an institution and forget about them. Cerebral palsy, Down syndrome, muscular dystrophy, any of these, things that now are not that really big a deal medically. But Geraldo went in, and this kind of made his career. He investigated it. We had a camera crew and showed these just horrific conditions that these children and older people were living in, and that was kind of just that was a takeoff of that when they had Lana do.
Yeah, very similar footage setup of her breaking in and resetting as things were falling apart around her and people were doing various things. But how do people feel about Sister Jude's, how she ended up at the end, her eventual turn to insanity and then living with Kit? Doesn't she? I can't even remember how she ends completely.
She dies. Well, she starts to go crazy, and then the two little kids take her into the woods, and the
alien babies or something.
Yes.
I think
so Grace and Alma, both had alien babies, right? Mm-hmm. And then Alma dies. Alma kills Grace, and
Grace kills Alma. Nope, Alma kills Grace.
And then Alma goes into the institution, and she gets killed. And Kit feels bad, like he couldn't save her, but he sees Sister Jude, so he takes her home. And she lives with him and the two kids. But she starts to go crazy, right? And she almost, stabs the kids. She has, a mental breakdown. So the kids are like, we have to take her in the woods. And they take her in the woods, and those aliens, heal her mind a little bit. And then she just grows old and dies.
I think the mental breakdown was just a trajectory of where she was in the asylum. Basically, she started off sane, was framed to be insane, and then insane, and was still insane until Kit took her home, and then the babies and the aliens healed her. I hate the aliens part.
It's really hard to like some of what happened without it sounding ridiculous.
I know. This is what I'm saying.
Well, and you know how, Alma killed Grace because, number one, she resented her a little bit, which you can't blame her.
Well,
but number two,
Grace was with Kit in the asylum.
Right, and then she kept saying, I can't wait for the aliens to come back. They brought us these babies and blah, blah. And Alma was like, I don't want them to come back. Not that you should kill somebody, but, I can't blame her for not wanting these aliens to come around. It's ludicrous.
I mean, I don't know. To me, you can't really parse out any one character's ending, because they were all tied into the ending of the series, and the ending of the series was, to me, of the season, was poor. It was poorly done.
For me, the most sense to end on is the closing of Briarcliff and giving a short. It was like a almost 3-episode epilogue.
It was.
Yeah.
And that's not. I didn't.
They should have ended with the reveal that the Dylan McDermott character was the son of Lana and, Thredson.
Didn't it?
No.
It ended at the interview, him confronting her, but we find out.
Right, and she killed.
But we're not positive, that's what he thinks, but as far as we know, she didn't have a kid, or they mentioned that she lost the baby before we find out she gave it up for adoption.
Yeah.
So
she
admits that it's him.
To him, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But I think as viewers, we don't know that Dylan McDermott. He says that he is Lana's kid. He knows that. And Bloodyface's kid. But from what Lana says and some of her lies that she tells the public, we're not sure yet. Or I'm confused from when I was watching it.
I think she's just putting on a face, because if the public finds out that she had a baby with Bloodyface that actually lived, her journalistic career would be over. That's one of the things they really paint about her, was that she's an ambitious journalist. She starts off trying to break into the asylum. She gets committed by Sister Jude, but then as she emerges from the asylum, she takes it down, which is what she always wanted to do. So I don't think that was really a red herring for us. I think we put it together and Johnny, I think, is Dylan McDermott's character's name.
Yeah, yes.
I think we put it together that no matter what she's saying to the public, that's who he is and what has happened, because that's really the only thing in the end that kind of follows a logical progression that leads you to this conclusion. But that's why I feel like that's where it should have ended, because then from there, you do get the confrontation, but you also get the stupid aliens.
Yeah.
And Sister Jude dying in Kit Walker's bed. She is sane by that point, and she kind of dies peacefully. She has the most peaceful death of all the deaths in the show. But
who has the least peaceful?
The guy who immolates himself.
Dr. Arden?
Yes.
That's what I would think.
Yeah.
He burns himself alive.
Yeah, probably so. Well, I mean, karma. What you gonna do?
Well, it's weird if it's karma since he killed himself in that. Probably one of the worst ways.
He did, but he was kind of led to the point, wasn't he?
Yeah. I mean...
I suppose he could have chosen a different way to do it, but then it wouldn't be American Horror Story.
Right.
So...
That is something you get with this show. Sometimes you're like, why did that character choose... Oh, because they have to pick the most horrific...
Shock.
Wait.
Shock value.
Mm-hmm.
So is there anything else that I feel like we have to talk about a little bit, the first musical outbreak we've gotten in this series.
Yeah.
The Dominica Nika song?
No, that wasn't a musical. She has the name game.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the name game.
Lana Banana. However she says it with her accent. She calls her Lana Banana.
Lana Banana.
Throughout the show, which is why that
Boston accent, sorry.
Which is why she, I guess in her insane state, pictures the musical.
You've directed me in a play, Kylie. You know I don't do accents.
I've never done Boston.
That's true, we haven't. Lana Banana. Yeah, that was weird. That was a number that I saw when Nick was watching it, and I was like, what is he watching? This makes no sense. And then when it came through the thing, then it made more sense. That they had been playing Dominique over and over on a loop, and she just wanted to hear a different song in her, like, drug-addled mind.
The person who's made everyone else listen to the same song over and over again is the one who finally can't stand it.
Yeah, which I liked it.
It just added to the craziness, I guess, but I didn't actually have a reaction to any of it other than...
It's kind of interesting. Musicals and horror is not very common from what I mean, more recently we've been getting a little bit more of that, but...
Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Reefer Madness,
Buffy's a little lighter
Is that horror?
I don't know. There's people getting eaten and heads getting chopped off and limbs. It certainly is. It's satirical of horror, certainly.
But for a show called American Horror Story to do it is a little strange. But to double down with it and have, at least it's Stevie Nicks in season 3, but season 4 there's a lot more music involved. I don't know about season 5, but it seems to keep ramping up.
Yeah, I think they did it in season 2, and they liked it so much that they decided to consciously do it in season 4 and make it a thing.
Well, do we know if season 5? Because I'm pretty sure it's more Jessica that wanted that. Jessica Lange wanted.
I don't know. Lady Gaga's in it.
That's true.
Listeners, we haven't watched the series yet. When we sit down to watch the season, I keep reverting to British terms.
Of Hotel.
Yes, we haven't watched Hotel yet, but Lady Gaga is in it. I would be surprised if she didn't sing. I think music plays a very important thread, though, in all 5 of the seasons. Even though the characters weren't singing in Murder House, there are some very obvious callbacks. Like, there's music taken from the Francis Ford Coppola's Bram Stoker's Dracula. There's music taken from, like, nothing obvious like Psycho, but something, little snippets of other horror films. And there's also some songs like that one song in Murder House, I can't remember what it is as I sit here and think about it. I can't remember it. It's some really weird old song that plays kind of recurringly throughout the season.
I don't remember.
I don't either.
I'm going to look it up. You keep talking.
All right, let's keep talking.
I'll know what it is when I see it.
So, the other thing I was curious about is who thought who was going to kill whom at the shootout at the end between Bloodyface and Lana. Or Bloodyface Jr., right?
Bloodyface Jr.
Johnny.
Mm-hmm. Because it seemed like he was going to kill her, and I personally liked that she got the last word, per se. But
yeah, she certainly turned a corner and became a very calculated person from where she came, which rightfully so. I mean, she lived through some pretty hellish things.
And watched Sister Jude do it.
Yeah.
I think she learned from her.
Yeah. Johnny, what a creepy character. And the whole thing with the prostitute and the breastfeeding.
I wasn't going to bring it up, but you did.
Well, it's creepy to me.
I mean, I'm glad she won in the end, but I don't know that as I was watching it, I was having any sort of reaction or wish to it. I don't know. The season didn't work like that on me, because I think by the time we got to that point, I watched this season like week after week when it was on, because I still had cable at that point. And so as the season progressed, I kept thinking, what the hell is going on? What are we doing here? What is going on? So by the time it got there, I was just like, is this over yet?
Yeah.
Which makes it sound like I hated it. I didn't hate it. But there was a little bit of impatience, I think, by that point.
Especially because they give you one extra episode of this season compared to season 1.
They do. Well, and they stick with 13 for the rest of them so far. Only Murder House is 12. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Maybe because 13's a lucky number.
Could be.
Maybe because it's an homage to Friday the 13th. I don't know. No, there's no Jason in it, but no one in a hockey mask has showed up.
That's true. Just a mask. But so, Sarah, are you any closer to being able to rank the seasons? Do you like this one more or less than season 1? Too bad it's not a video.
I honestly, there are so many things that go on in each season. I can barely wrap my head around it, let alone rank it. Honestly, I don't leave with a really icky feeling after watching it. It doesn't make as big of an impact on me as some of the other seasons. But that doesn't mean I like it less. As we all know, I'm a big giant chicken and I'm terribly afraid of everything. So this one had some really grotesque imagery in it, with what happens to Shelley, Chloe Sevigny's character, all the things that Dr. Arden did. I don't like to think about it that much. I guess I like it slightly less than season 1. But they're not that far apart from me.
So, and I'm doing this because Sarah will be moderating our next season, which is Coven. How do you like Asylum compared to Coven? Because I think, personally, and I'll just say this now, though we'll cover it when we get there, I like Coven better as a season. But I am way more disturbed by parts of Coven than I am by Asylum.
Okay, agreed. Agree with everything you just said. If Kathy Bates and her evilness didn't exist in Coven, it would be my slam dunk favorite. But it sits so grossly in my mind, and it's burned into my nightmares, everything she did and said, that it's really hard for me to like it. But maybe that means it's well written. It certainly made an impact.
Coven's my second favorite because it's, I think, a lot stronger written. What I've heard from people who've seen all the 5 is that the odd numbers are the better ones and the even numbers. It's kind of like the opposite of the Star Trekkers.
I was kind of just thinking that. Wow,
Yeah.
we're dorky. And Nick's wearing a Star Trek shirt.
Sure am.
It says, set phasers to stun.
Sometimes I wish it said, set phasers to fun, and then I sigh.
Oh, God. Set phasers to pun, maybe?
No.
And we're having a great time.
Yeah, we are.
We've just joined the Asylum.
It's 11:30. We're getting a little slap happy, y'all.
We might be.
I was just going to say that can't believe how much of those Kathy Bates images in season 3 stuck with both of you, because I feel like overall season 2 is much more grotesque and has much worse imagery than season 3.
Not to me.
That boggles my mind.
I think because a lot of the Hans Gruber, Dr. Arden stuff, we saw it, but not necessarily as blatantly or as... they did a lot of oblique camera shots. They did some stuff off screen. a lot of it was implied. You see blood trails, you see entrails, you see, but you didn't actually see a lot of it happen. Saw some of it, but not a lot of it.
It didn't land with me. Like, I didn't even know those things in the woods were his people. I thought they were just the aliens.
That's true.
So maybe it just didn't land the same way. And also, there is some expectation when you hear that they're locked in an asylum that they're going to be mistreated. So maybe I went into it knowing that terrible, horrible things were going to happen to these people. Whereas the Coven, all of a sudden Kathy Bates was there doing terrible things, and I was not mentally prepared for that at all.
And they showed all of it. Mm-hmm. Like, they did not even flinch. And I think maybe also, I'm just going to say it because of the racism that was associated with the character, in addition to the fact that she was torturous and openly violent, and they showed all of it, made that sit so uneasily with me. Mm-hmm. Whereas Asylum was, there was no pick and choosing who it was all of the patients were subject to these threats. Either Sister Jude was going to mistreat them, or Sister Mary Eunice, when she was possessed, was going to do something horrible, or this doctor, James Cromwell's character, was going to experiment on them and either kill them or turn them into these wood creatures. So you just knew it was going to happen. Maybe there was that predictability, the knowledge or the predictability of it.
Or
like
maybe Kathy Bates is just that good. I mean, the woman won an Academy Award for playing a very twisted and strange role. So maybe she's just that talented. Yeah. I don't know.
Come on, James Cromwell, though.
Is that from Cochrane?
Whoa, second Star Trek tie-in. Stop it!
I know.
I don't know.
Can we give a shout out to the casting of his son as the younger version of him?
And Freak Show?
And this.
Oh, yeah. I forgot.
Yeah, he does both. It's just in the picture in this, though.
Oh.
On the wall, it's a picture of his son, I believe. But he is credited.
And he definitely has a scene, at least a scene in season 4.
I mean, how good is that casting?
Well, very good genes there.
They look identical.
So.
Well, and speaking of the season 4 tie-in, I don't think we mentioned Pepper.
Oh, Pepper.
Which I don't know how much there is to say about her character in season 2, except that is one of the bigger puzzle pieces of bringing the 4 seasons together.
For me, who watched these out of order, so I watched season 4 first, and I know how she got to be there, and I knew what really happened. I had a little bit of a different perspective than maybe somebody watching season 2 first, because you didn't know if she did what they accused her of doing or not, whereas I had the backstory. I'd already seen.
You watched season 2 first in the order that it was made. You think Pepper did horrible things to her little sister or
her nephew.
That's what's stated, but whether or not you believe it, I think one of the running themes of season 2 is that, are these people really crazy or just a product of their time and a product of, the very sadistic kind of
mentality toward
that
those that were not able to speak up for themselves.
Exactly. Because it seems that Pepper's very innocent, but Mary Eunice is the one who makes an offhanded comment. This is before she was possessed. Oh, she drowned her sister's baby or whatever. Mm-hmm. So
that's all I have to say about this season. Unless you guys have anything to add?
I don't think so. I think we covered a lot of the plot points and how we felt. Do you want to close it out for us, Nick?
Goodbye?
Not really.
Yes?
Thanks for listening.
All right, I'll do it.
I should pay attention when you talk more.
I've been saying that for years. Anyway, since we have covered Asylum so in depth, I'd like to thank Sarah and Nick for joining me again to talk about American Horror Story for our second episode of our American Horror Story series. When we reconvene next time, we'll be talking about the third season, which as we've already alluded to, is Coven, and Sarah will be moderating that one, so we're looking forward to that. It's a better season, so I'm excited for it. But until that time, keep listening, keep watching. As the intro said, we have several more new episodes coming down the pike. We always do. New shows to cover, new TV to watch. Also, American Horror Story will be premiering here shortly in September, so keep a lookout and an eye out for that. Follow us at couchpotatoesunite.wordpress.com. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter. Subscribe to our feeds on iTunes or Stitcher Radio.
Maybe I should have closed it.
Hey, we already mentioned it was late. Anyway, keep listening, keep watching, stay tuned. As always, couchpotatoesunite.wordpress.com.